The Secrets of Middle-earth is brought to you by the StarQuest Production Network and is made possible by our many generous patrons. If you'd like to support the podcast, please visit GiveStarQuest.com.
You're listening to The Secrets of Middle-earth, where we discuss the hidden themes and deeper layers found in the works of J.R.R. Tolkien, whether in his writings or in any of the media derived from them. I'm Patrick Mason, and joining me today is Rob Leonardi. Hey, Rob.
Howdy, Patrick.
Howdy, Rob. And Robert Story. Hey, Rob.
Hello there.
And joining us once again, Father Bryan Shackett. Hey, Father Bryan.
Hey, everybody. How you doing?
All right. Today, we are discussing the Sin of Denethor. Despair. Its roots in Denethor's use of the palantír, with a look to our own current culture's use of AI and what Gandalf would have to say about it. And if that sounds pretty scattered, it is. But first, the news. Take it away, Rob.
All right. Well, the Lord of the Rings, The Hunt for Gollum, has officially started production. As of recording, they just dropped today video of motion capture of Andy Serkis, so that's kind of cool. But it will be in theaters December 17th, 2027. And then Magic the Gathering is coming out with a new set based on The Hobbit. This drops August 14th of 2026. Famously, the Magic the Gathering previously released a Lord of the Rings set in 2023, but this is a standalone expansion that shifts the focus entirely to the events of The Hobbit, featuring Bilbo, Gandalf, Thorin Oakenshield, Smaug, Elrond, and the company of the dwarfs, alongside many of Tolkien's most memorable locations and moments. In 2023, a special one ring card written in black speech was released and eventually sold to Post Malone for $2 million. And so collectors
bad about that. Post Malone has that card anyways.
So collectors are already eyeing ultra rare chase cards like the Gleaming Gold Smaug. So, and then they're also are expecting to release a Battle of the Five Armies co-op kit in 2027.
Wasn't there like a subplot in The Hobbit about craving treasure too much? No, that's something else.
No, I'm just really hoping that they don't do a Toriel with a tap 2 lands and fall in love with dwarf.
It's like some sort of connection thing.
Sacrifice this card to save random dwarf nobody cares about. Yeah. I'm sorry, Keely. I'm not that sorry. They did you dirty in the movies.
And now you know despair.
Yes. So our topic for discussion today, we've titled it The Sin of Denethor, but despair is a sin. And because we're very graced to have a priest with us on the podcast, I am going to do the Tolkienish thing and kick it over to him to give us the theology.
Thank you. Yeah, and I think this is an important one to define, of course, but also to understand. Because when you think about this is something that we all very much can fall into if we're not careful. As always, I'm going to really start with the Catechism. And the Catechism ties the sin of despair really to what it's saying against, and that's hope. So in number 20, in paragraph 2090 of the Catechism, hope is defined as when God reveals himself and calls him, man cannot fully respond to the divine love by his own powers. He must hope that God will give him the capacity to love him in return and to act in conformity with the commandments of charity. Hope is the confident expectation of divine blessing and the beatific vision of God. It is also the fear of offending God's love and of incurring punishment. So surely the hope is this expectation of the blessing of God and this longing, if you will, for this coming. Now, the first commandment is also concerned with the sins against hope, namely despair and presumption. We're going to look at despair. Catechism in paragraph 2091 defines despair as by despair, man ceases to hope for his personal salvation from God. for help in attaining it or for forgiveness of his sins. Despair is contrary to God's goodness, to his justice, for the Lord is faithful to his promises and to his mercy. I think when you frame it like that, the sin of despair really, the image I have in my mind, right? Imagine that you're like going through a burning building. Everything's falling apart around you, right? But you see the vision of Christ standing in front of you, this vision of light, of salvation. I think despair can be that practical thing where you take your eyes off of the Lord, who you're looking at, the Savior, and become so entrenched by the flame around you that you forget that he's given you the path to get to him. And then you fall into despair and lack hope that you're never going to get there. But it's not simply this passive thing. It's a more active choice, right? That's why it's a sin. Sin requires action. And you look at this and say, there's no way I can get there. And then you fall into despair of getting out of that, if you want to look at it practically like that. And the danger with that is when you fall into the sin of despair, you cease hoping and even acting in some ways for the good in that capacity. You kind of resign yourself to the accomplishment of the bad, which, as we're going to talk about today, Denethor unfortunately falls into. But I think also this is a very dangerous thing that we all can, if we're not careful, fall into. And it really is an act against God's love and against God's goodness, right? Because you then forget who he is and why he came for us. I could go further, but I think that's a good definition, starting place on the sin of despair. If that makes any sense.
Yeah.
I like that imagery. Kind of like, and then almost going into sins of omission, where you're just like, instead of going out and doing something, you just freeze and you're just like, I'm not doing anything else. I'm not going to try to help myself. I'm not going to try to help other people. And you just, you go into the fetal position in the burning house and let it happen.
The image I always have as we were starting the podcast today, in terms of despair, I should say, was what Dante wrote over the gates of hell in Dante's Inferno, right? Lose all hope, ye who enter here. Like, that's true despair. Like, because the point being is in hell, there's no getting out of it, right? So you're stuck there. The sin of despair is like looking at this, like, I'm never going to be free from this. No one's going to help me. God's not going to help me. And then you almost actively choose, I guess I need to stay here then. And you might say, how do you actively choose despair? Well, we'll see that in Denethor, but you definitely choose it by this rejection, its abandonment, if you will, of the love of God. You know, and even thinking, I'm not worthy of this, and thus I'm not worthy of this, I'm going to even act against it because I'm not worthy of this kind of thing. And choosing to act against it, there's a positive act of the will in terms of despair, the sin of despair.
Right, and I want to put that up against similar termed words we have in English, like sadness, right? I think that would, if you looked up despair in a thesaurus, you'd see words like sadness or depression or words like that. And the way we're talking about this word despair now is far more from a theological sense, right? It's not, it's almost unrelated to what we would think classically of as sadness, or especially what we would consider now as like clinical depression, although they can bleed into or lead into each other. But I want to kind of, set that out from the get-go. Those things are not necessarily what we're going to talk about here.
But I think it is a good thing to mention that the sin of despair can indeed lead into thoughts of suicide and everything like that. And if somebody is thinking that stuff, there is help out there, and they can call 988 if they live in America to get help.
I think that's important to highlight. The word despair comes from the Latin word desperare, which means hopeless, right? And I think it's important to recognize if someone falls into this desperare, which means this desperare, which means to be hopeless, excuse me. And I think it's important to recognize if we have these thoughts, if we have these feelings and emotions, there is help out there, as Rob was saying, and call someone who can help. The church is here. The people are here. We're here to help.
Man, I had a whole thing planned, and Father Bryan started, and I was like, well, hold on. Like, I've sat here for the past 5 minutes going, well, that just blows everything I had to say to Flint. Like, this, I have to re-examine parts of my life now, and we're only 10 minutes in.
Robert, if you need help, we are here.
I'm happy to be the Gandalf for you, Robert.
Don't threaten me with a good time. Okay, so without getting like too personal, I've diagnosed clinically like chronic anxiety and depression since I was like 10, 11, some long time. So hearing it phrased like that just kind of made me go, oh, a whole bunch of stuff just started like clicking right now. And not in, well, some fun one, irrelevant. I've always kind of had a morbid connection to Denethor because, like, I see where he's coming from. I get it. I don't agree with it, but, like, I understand how you could do it into this. And that whole speech just kind of, like, reinforced all the thoughts I already had on him in a much more concrete way. And also has racked me back in my heels yet again, going, oh my gosh, Tolkien is such a good writer. Like, come on now.
It's like his people are real.
Yeah, oh my. Did he know this guy? Come on.
I mean, considering he went through war, I'm pretty sure he met people that were on that brink. And so he could have firsthand experience writing about it.
Yeah, like, I would imagine, like, okay, so, like, he enlisted, we'll go with enlisted. He enlisted in World War I as, not strictly the word, but it's the word we're going to use.
Yeah.
And he entered in as an officer, didn't he? He never served as, like, soldier, infantryman, or anything like that. So, like, he probably had to meet with, like, superior and inferior officers. Like, he probably saw guys, like, break under the strain of combat, and like World War I combat, which is just unspeakably brutal and awful and horrific in ways that like mankind literally had never seen before. Like the dispassionate slaughter of chemical weapons and artillery bombardments and all that, like gun. Yeah, plus like just all of it.
Well, and I mean, something to remember about World War I, it's the last war where you have the modern Western armies. They still execute people for desertion, right? You don't have that play out in future wars from there, in part because of what they realized in this war, that a lot of times these people are doing this. They wouldn't, but they're in a psychologically terror state because of what's going on the battlefield. But because Tolkien was there, he would have seen that, and he would have seen people enter into this state of, I think is reasonable to call despair, where you have this hopelessness, like nothing is ever going to change. I've been in this trench for 2.5 years and we haven't moved. Like, I've watched people go over this wall and never come back for 2, 3, however many years. And so you had people in this war entering into this real state of despair as the war kind of ground on in the trenches. It's very much unlike what we had, at least with the Allied armies in World War II.
And one thing I kind of want to highlight, there is a distinction, at least like in terms of in ourselves and morally, if anybody might be struggling. There's one thing to struggle with these emotions and struggle with these thoughts and to fall into this, and there even can be mitigating factors if there is a psychological state that's affecting one's ability to make a choice, that kind of thing. Despair properly, the sin of despair properly, again, it's a positive act, right, in which you choose to let goes hope for this, to embrace the hopelessness for eternal salvation. And that's what makes Denethor's choices so tragic, because as we'll see, he makes that positive leap, right? And that's a serious thing. But if a person could struggle with a tendency towards despair and leading into that might not be the theological definition of despair, but nonetheless tends towards those emotions and those struggles. And that can, if you let it, can affect everything else in your life if you're not careful.
So let's talk a little bit about who Denethor the second was, because he was a second. So Denethor the second was the 26th and last ruling steward of Gondor. If you didn't know that, I guess spoilers for a closing in a 100-year-old book. But he succeeded his father Ecthelion II at his death in TA 2984. Denethor was described as appearing noble and powerful, even to rival the lordliness of Gandalf. In fact, when Pippin sees Denethor, he actually considers him more noble seeming than Gandalf, although older, which is funny. He was proud, tall, wise, far-sighted, and valiant, more kingly than any of his predecessors for a long time. He proved a masterful lord and a great ruler, seeing to all things large and small under his command. During the War of the Ring, however, his good judgment became tainted by pride and despair, resulting from recent military losses at Osgiliath, the use of a palantír, the death of his son Boromir, and the threat to his stewardship represented by Aragorn's impending arrival in Gondor. And, I think it'd be good to talk a little bit about the different portrayals of Denethor that we got, in the movie compared to the book. If anybody wants to take that one up.
Yeah, I think one of the main distinctions, right? When you look at one of the simple distinctions, right? Simple way of looking at it, in the book version of Denethor, the Denethor that Tolkien wrote, right? You see a more, I think, natural decline in how he falls into the despair and hopelessness. Because it's Denethor who actually does send out the messages for the allies, right? It's Denethor who sends, I think, the Red Arrow, if memory serves me correctly, to Rohan asking for help. It's him who actually initiates these contacts. He doesn't necessarily think it's going to do anything, but he initiates these contacts, right? And in the movie, you see Denethor losing all hope so quickly to actually work against this and actually seek to not light the beacons and that kind of thing. So I think you see that big distinction. In the movie, he's much more, not straight up evil, but almost to the point of acting an evil way. In the book, it's much more of a nuance. And I think he hasn't given up complete hope, at least by that point. It's more tied to the battle where he gives up complete hope,
Yeah, in the movie, they straight out if you didn't realize he was evil, then you have him going at a grape tomato, and you're like, that's just disgusting. And it's like, okay, clearly this guy's meant to be evil.
Industry for decades.
I still can't eat one. I mean, so are we going to discuss his gluttony and overly enjoying just one tomato should not be gluttonous. And yet.
Oh, yeah. It's funny, for all the scenes in Lord of the Rings, the movies that we see, and some of them are somewhat disturbing, right? For me, one of the most disturbing ones is the mouth of Sauron when he introduces himself and you realize he's literally just a mouth. Everybody remembers this scene. And everybody puts it solidly in the unnerving, disturbing, I did not like what I was watching category. You have this small hobbit singing this, sad but, kind of wonderful song or lovely song. And this old man just violating these great tomatoes.
Well, and then it was also intercut with him. He just sent his son out to die.
Oh, yeah.
He told Faramir, effectively, if you come back dead, I will be happy with you.
Yeah. As somebody who has a screen accurate Ranger Vithilian set of armor, I would rather watch Faramir die than that frickin' tomato. It's look, I'm not the biggest fan of horror movies. They're not my thing. John Noble has been in horror movies. Why is the scariest thing he's ever done eat a tomato?
He's just that good an actor.
Well, and there has to have been they had to have done something to that tomato because it looked like he had blood coming out of his mouth. Yeah, it wasn't just tomato juice.
Every part of the sequence is awful. It's not on paper. This sequence is man eats dinner while child appearing human sings drinking song. Why is it so repulsive?
On the screen, it was one of the most horrifying things I'd ever seen in my life.
There is a sequence of torture in this movie series, and I would rather watch that than this tomato.
So it's, I think this is definitely Denethor's real sin throughout the movie. No,
the real sin is that tomato. I mean, there is such a massive distinction between book Denethor and movie Denethor. Like, I would put it on the same level as book Faramir and movie Faramir. Book Faramir is like my dude. He's fantastic. Like, Aragorn gets major props for being effectively a prefigurement of Jesus. If Aragorn is pre-Jesus, Faramir is a walking saint. Like, just almost literally. He's one of 2 or 3 people in the history of Middle-earth to look at the ring and say, no, absolutely not. Get that away from me. Here's some supplies. Go. Get away from me. That thing scares me. Movie Faramir is not that. And by the same virtue, like, book Denethor is a king in everything but name, whose family line has guided Minas Tirith, which is on the border of Mordor. So this is a dude who holds the only line of defense between all of Middle-earth and Satan. His whole family has been doing it since time immemorial. If he has an opinion on something, like, it's probably a pretty good opinion. Like, I think we should do this in order to stop Satan from overrunning the country. That carries some weight with this guy. This is not Frodo, who is like, I will carry the ring. I have no idea what that means. I don't know how far I'm going, and I don't fully understand. This is a guy who is fully aware of what is on the edge of his country and the massive weight of responsibility he has. Movie Denethor has the tomato. Like, I can't emphasize enough how gross it is and, like, how radically different these two people are. So if you're sitting here wondering, I didn't think Denethor was that bad. He was kind of like the backup villain for the third movie. Go read the books. The man sinned, but not in the normal way. He went big and then he went home. Spoiler.
I think one of the things you miss by looking only at the movie Denethor, right, is, as we'll probably talk about momentarily, the greatness that Denethor had prior to his fall, right? He was an amazing leader, like a princely man, right? I forget how Tolkien describes it, but this notion that he not only was a king in all but name, but he's of higher lineage and higher birth and everything, even to other kings in Middle-earth at the time.
Yeah,
right.
Like the blood of the Númenóreans showed true through him much more than it had even through some of the kings.
Yeah, and I think you see this man who, again, held up the good fight for so long, right, that it's really sad that he lost it at the end, right? It's a very, very tragic in that way. So if you look at the book, he becomes more of a tragic figure, right, rather than this evil villain that the movie portrays him as.
Yeah. Which makes me think of, where is his lineage going to start in the Rings of Power?
Oh.
No.
Even though it's clearly detailed in appendix, which one's the lineage? Is B? I don't remember. I can almost, I would be willing to bet money they're going to try and link him to Al Farazan because, yep.
I mean, yeah.
That's really what Kemen's going to become.
Yeah, so movie Denethor, a little bit different. He's what I would say is that to me, it feels like what we get movie Denethor is basically what Gandalf sees the whole time. Because Gandalf can see through all of the Lord of the Mist, and you can see how, the minute Gandalf gets to Minas Tirith, he's ticked off. He's just, he sits with Denethor and in and out of the council and everything, and you can see he's like, something is wrong with Denethor from Gandalf's point of view. And so it's sad that we lose out on the tragicness of the figure of Denethor from the book and the movie, in part due to time. And but from what I gather, that's kind of like the view of Denethor from Gandalf's position is, I don't know if it's a Maiar ability to read souls or what it is, but you can tell Gandalf already realizes something has gone wrong with Denethor, a while back maybe.
Yeah, and obviously we'll talk about that momentarily, what that ultimately is, right, and how the sin falls into that. But it's a good metaphor, when you're talking about how sin can corrupt the good, right? There's a goodness in Denethor, a very high goodness that is lost by this despair, as we'll talk about, right? And it corrupts everything about him. It corrupts everything it touches. And then this amazing figure is lost.
Yeah. And I think that kind of starts with his look into the palantír. When he decides that he's going to start looking into the seeing stones, right? That's almost in a sense, I would say, like the sin of presumption, that if I only knew, maybe not presumption, but if I only knew what was ahead, I could do it better. I could prepare for it. I have the same problem, but
you're human? I'm shocked. There's a real reason we're banned from mediums and trying to talk to the dead and predict the future. It's not because it doesn't work. It's because we shouldn't do it.
Scripture is very clear on that point.
But if only I knew, I could stop things.
Yeah.
I just need the lottery numbers to prepare to take care of my family. Like, I want to be rich for a good cause.
Exactly.
Yeah, nothing bad will happen, guys. I can be responsible with money. I promise.
Of all the tests that God puts me through, a couple $1 million be a great test for him to do.
C student is still passing.
Almost sounds like the exact arguments that made to use the ring, right?
It is a gift.
Okay, so just in case our listeners are not aware of what the palantír are, which I would be really shocked, but would anybody like to describe what the palantír are?
Yeah, so the palantír, known as the seeing stones, were stones that could be used in communication with one another. And they also, as we can see, they're also able to see many things across the face of the world. And apparently, according to Rings of Power, they can see the future.
Oh, we sure can.
Yeah, totally. They can totally do that. That doesn't cause any plot holes.
Didn't Tolkien comment that they can see into the past? Isn't that something he spoke of?
I think that's that. Yeah,
I could be wrong about that. I want to say he said they can see into the past.
Yeah, I feel like in the Lost Tales, he describes what they're able to do from a far-seeing capability, like how far they can see abroad, how much stone they can see through. Like, he got really detailed. It's kind of like a spec manual for a gun or something. And if
you haven't read it, it's a beautiful essay on the palantír. It's amazing.
Yeah. But they were made probably by Fëanor, and crafted in Valinor itself, brought over, and unlike Gandalf, who came over on a meteor, came.
I'm just like, how many times can I get Pat to groan today? I'm gonna tick him off here.
Okay, sorry. So when people looked into it, they could communicate with people with the other stones and anyone who might be looking into them. And so the people of great power can manipulate the stones, as we see that Sauron did, and to see virtually any part of the world and be able to get into people's heads effectively.
Yeah. One thing I think is important to know about the stones as well is they were given by the elves to the men of Numenor, and they were saved by the faithful, and they brought them to Middle Earth, right? One of the seeing stones always was directed towards Valinor. It was this one on the I'm forgetting the name of the tower, that was always perpetually seen towards Valinor, so they could go and look towards the true west after the rounding of the world. And then the other thing I think is highly important and is that there was a rightful owner and user of the palantír. It's like, yeah, people of great power could use them, strength of will. But there was one who was rightfully able to do it. It was when Aragorn in the book, he looks into the palantír. Someone I forget who questions like, what are you doing? And he said, well, I forget the phrasing, but by right, I have the power to do this because I am the rightful king of Gondor. It is mine by virtue of my birth. It is my right to my authority to do this. There's certain authority that I have to have there. Denethor, technically, I think Tolkien may have said that he, as the ruling Steward of Gondor, would have a certain right or able to do that. Not as much as Aragorn, of course, but you had to have the strength of will to turn the stone to your purpose. Side point, which I think is cool. You have to be directing at the stone, at another stone, for it to communicate. That's why when Pippin picked up a stone, it's by seeming chance that he was directed at Sauron. Okay, what Tolkien says about it. It's not chance, of course, it's the hand of God, but the notion that you have to direct it properly to communicate.
Except the Master Stone, but that one's special.
Except the Master Stone, yes.
Yeah, so, and then 4 of the stones were lost, right? And then there was a stone in Minas Tirith. There was a stone in Minas Ithil, which was captured by Sauron. And then I don't know, where did Saruman get his stone from? Which one was that?
The Orthanc stone.
It's the Orthanc stone.
But like it was in Orthanc itself?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah, that's why when Aragorn takes it, it's by rights his, because Orthanc was part of the realm both of Gondor and Anor. It's sort of the one of the crossing points, I guess, between the two realms.
Well, wasn't Orthanc also maybe built by either the Númenóreans or the Dúnedain? Like
it was. It was.
So it's his in 2 different ways.
Right.
Yeah.
All the ways.
Yes. It's really his.
Yeah. I think 2 of the stones are at the bottom of the ocean, I think, right? They were lost, if I remember correctly. At least one was lost.
Yeah, one's in Númenor, so it's definitely at the bottom of the ocean.
2 of them are lost in the northern seas when the last king of Arnor flees and does not heed the warnings that the Witch King can control the weather. And then I believe the stone at Osgiliath fell into the river. So, some golem creature has it.
It wasn't taken to Minas Tirith. Minas Tirith has its own stone.
Yeah, that's the Anor stone, because it was Minas Anor before it was Minas.
Okay. Yeah. No, that's right. Okay.
And if I remember correctly, the original Minas Tirith stone was the Master Stone.
So there was 8 stones total then. The Tower of Avalon.
Osgiliath was the capital of Gondor until the Dark Times, until the Empire. Oh, wait. No.
Oh my gosh. I thought I was the one doing Obi-Wan quotes.
You don't have a lock on that. So
one of the things,
basically, Denethor goes bad because of in part because of the palantír.
Yeah,
well, because it had. Sauron was kind of manipulating it.
Yeah, so someone of significant or of sufficient strength and will can kind of turn the stone to their own ends. You can use it to see in the past, not the future, because that creates too many plot holes. Looking at you, Rings of Power. Again. Sauron knew Denethor was staring into the palantír. Actually, before I get into this, allow me to go on an etymology tangent, because this is a Lord of the Rings podcast and Tolkien is a philologist, so I get to do fun little etymology and philology tangents that make me giggle. Palantír is directly translated as like seeing stone. Palan means to see and tyr means far, unless I have it backwards, which sometimes I do. The Latin versions of those are tele and visio. So they are all watching TV too much, and Tolkien wants you to know that very, very clearly. So Denethor's sin is also he's watching too much cable news. Please tell your parents. Also, please stop watching cable news. So, to bring me back to my own tangent, Sauron is effectively forcing Denethor to watch terrible, like, cable TV news to convince him that all hope is lost. There are Corsairs coming up your rivers. The Rohirrim have been wiped out. They're scattered. I've got this huge giant army on my side of the wall. Also, I'm going to burn Osgiliath. Yeah, good luck. You're doomed. Which is, I mean, he's been dealing with this for years. This is not Sauron just one afternoon going, "Hi, look at all this stuff I'm preparing to send directly at you." He has spent years and years and years showing him all of these things that will literally drive him to despair. And Denethor, like every good TV watcher, just keeps watching. He just keeps staring because that next video might be a cute bunny. It's not going to be a cute bunny. It's going to be somebody making you miserable. That's how TV works.
I think
Sauron had his own algorithm.
Yeah, Sauron has an algorithm. They're not even evil, and they're not. I can't distinguish them. They're all evil.
I think it's one of the important things that we're getting at here, which I think is really significant, is that most of the stewards at Denethor is the only one to be known to actually use the palantír, correct? Because while they may have had the right as a result of being the steward of Gondor, it was recognition that it was a dangerous thing to do. Since I'll give the movies this quote: when Saruman shows Gandalf the palantír in the movie, he says, they're not all accounted for. So the idea is you don't look into it since they're not all known where they were, and the one was lost, right? So it was just a decision. We shouldn't do this because it's too dangerous. And it does speak to his strength of will and character, Denethor's, that at least in the book, that he was able to withstand this for so long. Because when Saruman, for his credit, when he started looking into this and started doing all this, it even just furthered his fall and his even working for Sauron directly in his search for the ring. That never happened with Denethor. Yes, he fell into despair, but he never gave up and sided with Sauron. He never did that. He resisted Sauron to the end, even though he fell into despair at the end. And I think it speaks to his character and his strength, right? And I think it goes into this notion of sins, like, I can do this thing, but I am strong enough to remain true. I'm strong enough to fight this. I can dip my toe into this evil because I'm strong enough to fight it. And
you mean you can touch the darkness?
No.
Oh, I knew it was coming. I knew it was coming the minute.
I was sitting here preparing a rebuttal to that Nietzsche quote that I hate, and you hit me with one I hate more.
Can we vote you off the island, Rob?
Why bother? It's going to be wiped out in 2 seasons.
But anyway, I think that speaks to like the danger of this, of going into certain as akin to sin here, right? And it's when he looks into the stone, which you may mention this earlier, Robert, is this Sauron only shows him because Sauron eventually recognizes that he's not going to be successfully turning that Denethor to his will, right? So then what does he do? He shows Denethor images that are true, the only images that Sauron wants him to see. Right. And I think we said one of my favorite scenes in the book, which is not in the movie, is Aragorn coming up the Anduin with in the ships and the Corsair ships and the unfurling of the banner of Gondor and all this beautiful thing. Sauron showed all these ships coming up, which is one of the final straws for Denethor. But he didn't show those ships were like the image. Maybe he didn't show it. I'm not sure if this is specified, but maybe he saw those ships kind of thing. Right. But the ships were staffed with allies. But Denethor would assume to a staff with enemies and all that. And you can see he only got what the enemy wanted him to see, which he didn't take into account.
Which is kind of like, he very prideful, right? And even going back to when we look at the fall of Adam and Eve, right? You look at, there's some theological speculation on the fact that Adam was given the command to till the garden and to make it so that effectively the serpent didn't get in to begin with. And he failed at that. So his lack of lack of, I'm missing a word here, perseverance effectively allowed this type of temptation to happen, and the ultimate sin of eating from the tree of knowledge of good and evil.
Yeah, there's a real, so I mean, you can see it. So let's say you're a Denethor, you're 150 years into the struggle. You really love cherry tomatoes, and you're, you can see the times they are getting tough, right? Your Osgiliath is just a constant battle between you and the enemy. You've held it for so long, and you just need to know what's going on the other side of the river, right? You need to have a couple battles come out your way, and that'll secure you for at least another 2 or 3 seasons, or maybe another year. I've got this tool. I can use it. I'm powerful. I'm standing up against Sauron here. I'm doing this for the right reason. I'm going to look, right? And, maybe the first, 10, 20 dozen times he looks at it, he only sees what he wants. But then Sauron, being crafty Sauron, which is the thing that Rings of Power does actually pretty well in portraying, is slowly turning it to seeing only what Sauron wants him to see. Right. And that, I think, is where the despair really creeps in, is like, I have fought this fight my entire life, and I want to leave this kingdom to my sons, and I know they're going to fight it too, but they're, Boromir's a strong, brave man, nothing like me. A great guy. That Faramir, he's too much like me. And he likes that Gandalf guy too much. But he's my strong, brave boy. He's going to take over for me. He's going to lead us, and maybe we won't be victorious, but we'll still stand. Or we'll be minus Tirith, right? We'll be the last bastion of hope for the West. And but he's just getting this steady stream of bad news, fake news, whatever you want to call it. And then his son dies, right? His favorite son, the one who's going to take over after him, the one, the strong leader he thought his people needed. And that, I think, really unravels things for Denethor.
Yeah, and that, I think that's kind of where it goes into like the sin of presumption, because he's presuming he can look into the palantír and not fall under to the succumb of Sauron. Imagine what would happen if he actually started searching for the ring himself.
Yeah.
Like that that could have been very bad. That's what happened with Saruman, right? But he had the presumption that, nothing bad's going to happen to me, so I can keep looking at this. I can keep doing this sin of doing things I shouldn't be doing, because nothing bad's going to happen. It's not really hurting anybody. It's just me looking into something.
And it has authority. I'm the steward of Gondor. I have the authority to do this, right? Mm-hmm. But I think, again, he loses sight of the focus, and ultimately this notion of you do, but it's not, you don't have the ultimate authority, right? You don't have the ultimate control. And I think there's a sin of presumption and tied with that, which, as you may not sure if you did this intentionally, Rob, but that the Catechism ties the sins of the Catechism ties sin of despair and presumption as sins against hope, both of them. So even in that presumption, he's kind of sinning against hope in that way, because he's lacking this focus and joy towards eternal life in that way. And that's a tragedy.
Yeah. And, I think, and at its very beginnings, it's probably a little bit of pride and a little bit of failing at prudence. Right.
Yeah.
But it's what's the prudential judgment here? Well, I have this need, and I'll just look for a little bit. And then your prudence starts to give way, and you stop sinning against the regular good old virtue of prudence, and you start sinning against the really important virtue of hope.
Mm-hmm. And I think one thing also, it's like he again, that pride really begins to eat at him. It's always, that's how sin works, right? I'll just do this one little thing, it'll be okay. I'll do this one bad thing for the right reasons, it'll be okay. And then all of a sudden you're doing these 3 bad things for the so-called right reasons, and then the 5 bad things. And then even if you're holding yourself against the truly evil things, the sin and this perception of like concupiscence in the world, right, is leading you away from looking at this properly. And you're not seeing the goodness from God in that perspective. And thus the ultimate hope in God that he was meant to have, especially in Iluvatar and Denethor, in Denethor's world, right, in the Valar, that he should have. And then that led him away from this to reject success at the end, right? And to reject all ability to hope.
Yeah. So something that I always like to point out, and is really great analogy for sin, is like, as we discussed earlier, Denethor has like the right to use it. Sauron tried to take that from him, like tried to dominate him through the palantír. And Denethor resisted, like actually beat him back. So a man goes toe-to-toe with Satan and wins. What a great recipe for pride. Like, hey, I beat the devil in a fiddle contest. I mean, palantír contest.
To be fair, he's not the devil. He's just a really powerful demon.
Yes. Yes. I'm walking away. I'm walking away from this rabbit hole. I'm walking away from this rabbit hole just to make the point of like, if anything would convince you that not only do I have the right to use this, but I have the responsibility to use this, is I used it, I was attacked by a demon and beat them. Why would I ever suspect that demon is going to come back and try a different tactic? Because that's how demons work, right? They just try the one time and they never bother you again. That's how temptation works, right, guys?
It's a little different than that.
Like, I mean, that one of the reasons I love
now to be fair, it does work that way if they find the one way to get you.
That is true. That is true. And they will keep doing it, and I hate it. But like, I lost my own train of thought. It's completely gone.
And what we see is the very same thing does not play out with Aragorn, right? He takes it, he looks, he does his battle of wills with Satan, Sauron, and wins, right? He wins, and then he doesn't look at it again. You know, he at the even after this the Battle of the Pelennor Fields, and they're all in the tents outside and making the war council, trying to figure out what they're going to do. And Gandalf is like, "Yeah, we're pretty much doomed. You know, unless the ring gets tossed into the fire, he is going to overwhelm us." There's no point where Aragorn's like, "Yeah, let me just check my crystal ball.
let me see how big the army coming after us is. It's big enough. I don't need to know anymore."
And part of that is he didn't look in there in the palantír to try to find the future. And even when he did look, he looked in there to communicate with Sauron and to trick Sauron into like, come after me, right?
I totally have the ring, probably.
and it's sort of like, you know what, I would love to take the brunt of the attacks that come to my friends, to come to my kids. Like, come after me, and that's all you need to know.
I think realistically, when you look at how the authority is exercised between Aragorn and Denethor he does have authority here, as Tolkien himself acknowledges. But I think one of the dangers here is he doesn't have the humility. That's where the pride comes in, right? There's certain, like, I forget the exact quotation, but after Aragorn looks in the palantír in the book, right, he says it's his by right to do so, and if Denethor has the right to do it, Aragorn's right is even more solid because he's the rightful king. It's like Aragorn even has the authority in that, like the God-given authority to do that, right? But he says, I have the authority, but the will was just enough. See, Aragorn recognizes what he's facing to a certain extent. He has more of an appreciation, I think, for that. And he recognized the wisdom in not doing this more than he has to. Mm-hmm. And that's the thing that over years, initially, I'm sure Denethor may have agreed with that initially, but over years, he got used to doing it, and he was drawn into that sin of trusting in this, not trusting in God, to use modern analogies here.
And we see, Denethor's fall. It happens fairly rapidly.
It does, yeah.
From the reader's perspective, we see, especially after Osgiliath is taken, he starts making very questionable military judgments. And then he stops even once the siege starts. He's like, well, abandon all hope, ye who live here. Right. He effectively, once he has Faramir back, he's like, I've lost both of my children. I'm not even going to check to see if my son's breathing. And I'm going to pour oil on us and hold us up in the halls of the dead. And we're going to burn ourselves like the old kings did, the pagan kings. And that is, I think, of all of the metaphors for like where hopelessness leaves you, I think that's probably one of the best. That when you're hopeless, it's not just that you want your own self-annihilation. You also want to take everything else with you. Like it's not, people say, oh, well, he's not hurting anybody else and it's like, no, you do. Once you've reached a point of despair, you will get to the point where you start taking actions to, for lack of a better phrase, take everybody else out with you.
And sorry, go ahead, Rob. Sorry. I was going to say, one of the things that strikes me is what's going on and in that scene concurrently, right, is when he's losing hope. That's what it does. Despair causes you to not see the good and not work for the good. What's happening concurrently? Aragorn is coming, to quote Tolkien, out of the paths of the dead, right? Which is a very Christ-like analogy, obviously. With the victorious, crazy, right? Yeah. With this victory that brings about victory out of defeat, right? And if he had just held on to the hope longer and not acted for the despair, right, he would have seen the victory that would have been brought.
Yes, ultimately what leads to his destruction is the realization that everybody who is truly given into despair, and as somebody who's flirted with that a few times, my problems are too big and I am too small, which is not wrong, but there's a huge missing third piece of, yes, I am too small. God isn't.
So, and I think that's a great way to segue into, and I'm going to mispronounce this, Magnificia Humanitatis. How bad did I do?
Magnifica Humanitas.
Yeah, all right, there we go. All right.
So, Magnifica Humanitas, yes.
Right.
Yeah, the accent is key.
Yeah, whatever. You should listen to my Spanish. So the Pope, our good Chicago-born Pope Leo, put out his first encyclical, and interestingly enough, it's ostensibly on the topic of AI, although it's a very long encyclical, and he talks about a lot of stuff.
Yeah, it's mainly on AI, but I would say only like a third of it is actually AI. He does a great way. He talks about a lot of different things, and it's just it's really nice to see the completeness that he talks about our faith with.
Yeah, and if you're wondering why he took the name Leo, just look at the past Leos and their encyclicals, and hopefully you'll figure it out. So,
especially Leo the 13th, especially the
last one. Yeah,
there's only one. You can catch up real quick. No, Leo's 13.
There's 13 ones.
Yes, I caught up. There's 13 before this one.
Yes.
Look, it's late and I have a child. I will hide behind this for the next 17 years.
Which I do have to say, I actually just finished, I think yesterday, the encyclical, because the Vatican put it out in audiobook format on the Vatican News .va. So they break it down into the 5 chapters in the introduction and conclusion. So it's it takes a while to listen to. I mean, you're looking at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 hours of listening to it. But it is dense and it is beautiful.
It's really
so
beautiful.
it's about the same length as Rover Random.
You're not wrong.
Just to put it into context.
Can we start defining length of things by how long it is in comparison to Rover Random?
Absolutely.
It's one Rover Random long.
Yeah. It's about a Rover Random.
Yeah. It's a quote unquote short story.
And this is really up the Holy Father's alley, right? Because I think shortly after he was elected, he was asked why he took the name Leo. And he did so directly tying to Leo XIII, who discussed the church's social teaching pretty extensively. But he referenced AI pretty much immediately afterwards, how he did this, recognizing AI will have an impact upon humanity going forward. So right up the Holy Father's alley.
This was not only a somewhat expected encyclical, he also knocked it out of the park. He did the Babe Ruth thing, walked up the plate, pointed in the outfield, and smashed it. So now, if you want to hear the SQPN take on most of the document, you can go listen to The Secrets of Technology. We're going to talk about the very specific part where he quotes Gandalf.
The part we're all here for.
Yes, because this is the Secrets of Middle Earth. So if you flip on over to chapter 5, the culture of power and the civilization of love, and you scroll on down to paragraphs 212 and 213 are titled we can all do our part, and if you'll indulge me, I'll read it unless somebody else wants to read it. We can have the priest do it.
I can if you want me to.
I think you have to read it with a Chicago accent, though, so it needs to be in its native language.
I can't do that.
Yeah. So
okay, so sure, I can go for it. Sure. At this point, however, a subtle temptation may emerge, namely the thought that the problems are too big and we are too small, and that our choices therefore cannot make a difference. This is a polite form of resignation, often disguised as realism. Certainly not everyone has the same power to make a difference. There are those who govern, make investment decisions, lead institutions, conduct research, educate, produce, or provide information. And then there are those who only seem to live their daily lives. Yet no one is without responsibility. We all have our own areas for action, and it's precisely there and nowhere else that we must choose whether to fuel the mentality of force, even if only through indifference, cynicism, or lies or hatred, or to preserve the mindset of peace with truth, moderation, closeness, and care. And now for the part we're all here for. The 20th century Catholic author J.R.R. Tolkien, in the words of a protagonist in one of his novels, described our responsibility in this way. Quote, "It is not our part to master all the tides of the world, but to do what is in us for the succor of those years wherein we are set, uprooting the evil in the fields that we know, so that those who live after may have clean earth to till. The civilization of love will not arise," end quote, "The civilization of love will not arise from a single or spectacular gesture, but from the sum total of small and steadfast acts of fidelity that serve as a bulwark against dehumanization. For this reason, it is worthwhile pausing to reflect on some aspects of how we, each in our own way, can cooperate in building the civilization of love. Without presuming to exhaust this theme, I would like to propose 5 paths toward daily and public responsibility: the need to disarm words, building peace through justice, adopting the perspective of the victims, cultivating a healthy realism, and reviving dialogue and multilateralism.
So yeah,
and if you want more, go read more.
Yeah. So the
or listen to it.
Gandalf, which is awesome.
And there was much rejoicing.
Yeah. I think it actually follows really what we're talking about here today, right? Because I think it's if you look at this, to tie it in, we're talking about with Denethor. If you look at this from that, you can see Denethor saw, what can I do in the face of this evil? I can't do anything. I can't stop this, unless he fell into despair, right? This comes after that. The quotation comes after all that. I think this comes right before they march on Mordor, right?
Yeah, very shortly. This is the day after they're in the in the field in front of the walls of Minas Tirith. They're having the war council. It's, Aragorn and the Prince of Dol Amroth and
the Captains of Gondor.
Captain of Gondor and Gandalf and, a couple other people standing around trying to figure out, what do we do now? Like, we won this battle, but the forces arrayed against us are way too much. Like, what's the play here? And Gandalf says, well, mostly we're going to distract them so that Frodo can finish his mission. And they're like, well, I mean, this is just folly, right? We're like, if we stay here and we stay in our tower and maybe we can live to fight on just a little bit longer. But, Gandalf's like, no, we've got to do what we can.
And that's when Aragorn apparently says Arandiel are not for Frodo. A little bit salty about that, Alex.
It's the only time I've thought, no, that's wrong. He totally shouts for Frodo.
Yeah.
With the one tear in his eye before getting like a 50 orc kill streak in 20 seconds, because I really like that level.
But with the Pope quote, I'm quoting the Pope's, quoting the Pope, not the Pope's, the Pope in paragraph 212 that we read. This is a polite form of resignation, often disguised as realism. And that is exactly what this whole Sin of Despair is, right? Except I think what the Pope is talking about here is a little bit more that more broader. And the fact that there's a lot of people that think that there's more out there. And so how do I put this? There's more out there than there really is. And it's not necessarily just falling into despair, but falling into the idea of, well, I have to do these things instead because this is what's real. And taking the resignation of, I'm not going to do what is good for the common good, but I'm going to do what's good for this certain people.
Yeah. Sorry, I was yawning. I mean,
sorry to bore you that much, Robert.
Wow. 1-year-old child. Ugh. The bulwark against everything. No, it is good. Oh, there are some things that I could just listen to on repeat, and some of these passages from this encyclical are among them, because you can just pull so much out of them. Because he's totally right. It really does feel like, well, I'm just trying to be realistic. Like, I've had this problem all my life and I'm still struggling with it. Like, what can I do? Well, nothing. But again, it's, you can do nothing. God can do it all if you let him. And that's where the sin comes in, is forgetting that second part of God can do it if you let him. And that's why it's so insidious. Like, Denethor just gives up. He sees the ship sailing and he's like, you can't fight two armies at once. Like, you lose. You can't fight the entire forces of Mordor, and now there's a bunch of Corsairs sailing up. I can't handle that. Yeah, you can't. Thankfully, they're not Corsairs. It's Aragorn and the armies of the dead rolling up.
Yeah, exactly. And I think you see that choice between the two, between these good and bad that we're all faced with at some point that the Holy Father is talking about. As you said, Rob, this resignation. When you're faced with this thing, do you choose the good and say, I'm gonna do the good because it's worth doing, it's good, right? In the face of this, as he's saying, we're gonna do our part here to fight evil, so that afterwards I can have good fields to sow, kind of thing. Or do I fall into despair like Denethor and like give up hope of victory?
Yeah. It reminds me of a quote from one of my favorite seasons of TV of all time, which is Angel season 5.
This would get spicy.
Yeah. So Angel season 5, there's a point where they realize that there's really nothing they can do. Like they're just going to succumb to the evil eventually. Like it's just going to grind them down. And one of the guys goes to visit his friend who works at a kind of a Goodwill. They take stuff in and they give it out to the poor, kind of a thing. And he starts, he shows up and he's like, hey, if I told you that none of this matters, Like it's all going to get overwhelmed and erased, and the evil is just going to march on and crush all of this. You know, what would you say to that? Because that's what he's struggling with. And she looks at him and says, I'd say grab the other side of that couch. We need to move it in there because we're moving it on a truck later for a family. Right? It's this idea that it doesn't like, I'm here to play the part that I'm here to play. And if I get the big part and I've got to make the big decisions, okay, God willing, no. But, you know, if I see the people in front of me that I see that need my help, that's the call. And whether or not that good may or may not get erased by some evil in the future, that's not my call to care about that. Not right now, at least.
And one thing I see that ties so well into everything we hear in Tolkien, right? Because Sauron never saw the hobbits coming. He never thought that that's how someone would destroy the ring that way. That's the whole point, right? One of the points of the Lord of the Rings. And Denethor obviously didn't believe that was a good idea. And that's one of the things where he falls into this. This isn't going to help, right? And it's those small things ultimately that bring about the greatest good. Yes.
I mean, Sauron doesn't consider a small one-man fighter to be any threat. Otherwise, he'd have a tighter defense. Like, that's why he never sees the Hobbit coming. Yes, that was a New Hope reference.
Yeah, you really need to put something over the exhaust port. Just
a screen.
Something. I mean, I get the price of a womp rat, but still.
We got the retcon later on explaining why, right? So.
No. But the Wookiee who needed to go to the bathroom was a way better justification by any standard. For anybody who thinks I'm joking, I dare you to. I mean, but it is like the hobbits are nobody. The hobbits are nobody's. The biggest thing the hobbits have ever done is they fought off a pack of wolves in one really cold winter. Like, by any modern standard.
And they invented the game of golf.
Yeah.
And they invented, I mean, that actually is very important.
Yeah. Fighting a goblin horde, invented the game of golf at the same time.
And also had a help in inventing smoking. So, like, they are not military people. That's why they're, in Tolkien's worldview, that's why they're the perfect choice, because you're going to see Aragorn coming, especially when he announces himself. You're going to see Boromir coming. That's a guy who only works at the head of an army. To be fair, that's where he's the best. Boromir is a fantastic commander. He's a skilled fighter. He reclaimed Osgiliath from Mordor. Like, he's an incredible, incredible man. So, of course, he'd be the one to go to Rivendell. Of course, he should be the one to carry the ring. But in a world in which God exists, he's human, he's fallible, he can't resist the ring. He's been too raised in glory to be able to resist. Frodo has no idea what he's doing and is more or less blindly trusting that he was put there for a reason. That's why he wins. Well, that's why he gets 99% of the way, and then a breath of God saves him, because that's divine intervention. We've already covered that, and we will be going into it more in the Fate and Free Will episode coming soon on the Secrets of Middle-earth.
So what you're saying is that Gollum is not the hero.
Yes, that is exactly what I'm saying.
I mean...
What?
I held my tongue out of respect.
And I appreciate that. Okay, so I think we've covered quite a bit of ground, but before we move on to our feedback and closing up shop, is there anything else you guys want to talk about on this topic?
Don't give in to despair. If you start to, message me on the Discord. I will help. I've been there.
I do think that, you know, with the end of what, again, paragraph 212 of the Pope's here saying that we all have our own areas for action, right? The Frodos, well, the Hobbits had their own area for action, right? The men of Gondor had their own areas for action. Men of Rohan had their own areas for action. And it's when we take that action and we use it, as the Pope says here, that we must choose whether to fuel the mentality of force, even if only through indifference, cynicism, lies, or hatred. And we can look at our culture today and how much people are just so angry, and people want to force so many things in the way that they think is right. And for the sake of almost like broad-mindedness, right? Like everyone, for the sake of common good, or what they think is common good, that resignation disguises realism. And Archbishop Fulton Sheen said, when broad-mindedness, when it means indifference to right and wrong, eventually ends in a hatred of what is right. And I think that is kind of where the Pope is getting at here, where we have to do something. And that the thing that we have to do in every single one of us is to preserve the mindset of peace. And sometimes that means destroying a ring.
Or choosing the good every day, right? And I have one fun comment, which I'll say now. Technically, this means that Tolkien is now adjacent to papal teaching. Just saying, he's now adjacent to papal teaching.
Yes.
So when is his case for sainthood going to open?
I ironically, years ago, did find a prayer written by someone for his beatification. I have seen that somewhere. But
Hang on,
once we get Chesterton in,
Google a.
Oh no! Chesterton. After reading Chesterton, Tolkien will go ahead first before Chesterton. I can guarantee that.
Yeah.
If we have a patron saint of paradox, shouldn't we not recognize him to make it official?
One thing I'll say, go back to my second thought is I think when you see the Holy Father's words here, it's like, to quote what the Robs have said, what the Robs have said here is that, yes, the small actions, even as seemingly insignificant as they may be, right, is that daily of choosing love, to choosing the good and the true in the face of evil, that actually keeps the despair at bay to a certain extent, right? And the seemingly simple thing of caring for, of like making lunch for your child or doing something simple out of love, can keep that at bay to a certain extent, because it's there that the love of Christ can come into the hearts. And I think that reflects very beautifully in the story of Lord of the Rings, right? It's the simple acts that really highlight who the hobbits are that actually makes them the ones that the only ones capable of doing this beautiful act of destroying the ring.
Right. Yeah. And that goes to, doing, as you said, Father, doing the simple acts in the moments, right? To love in the moments, in the everyday moments of life, that we have to keep choosing. Okay, in this moment, I might be frustrated, but I'm not going to fall into that. And it reminds me of a quote from Saint Mother Teresa, where she says, "Wash the plate, not because it is dirty, nor because you are told to wash it, but because you love the person who will use it next." And that's it. It's that mentality of doing the thing out of love, not because it's out of obligation, like some people might think is the best thing to do. Some philosophical discussion there. But not just because, oh, hey, it's dirty, I have to do this, but with the purposeful intention of loving in the moment, right? We change diapers, not because, oh, hey, it stinks, it smells, I want to get this out of here, but because we love our child enough to take care of them.
Very well said. All right. Move on to our feedback for our latest episode, which, as of this recording, dropped a whole 5 hours ago.
I think we're up to 6 at this
6 hours.
point.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Makes all the difference.
Yeah. Our heckler, Jeff Hecker, gave us a comment on Roverandom. He says, "Did you know if you play Pink Floyd's Dark Side of the Moon while reading Roverandom, it syncs up?"
Chapter 2, yeah.
How did he find that out? That's my question.
I mean, I Googled it, and according to Google AI, Pink Floyd's iconic 1973 album, The Dark Side of the Moon, has a total running time of exactly 1 Roverandom, so that tracks out.
No, it's only 42 minutes and 52 seconds. Come on.
That's about fifth of a rover random. So that's one chapter.
So as somebody that played their children as I drove up to up north in Michigan to drop my son off at camp, and was like, oh, we can get through rover random before we drop him off, and we got to chapter 3. Yes.
It's longer than you think.
So that ride was almost like a little over half a rover random, right? So.
About 3/5 of a rover random.
Yeah. Rover random. All right, well, that's it for this episode of The Secrets of Middle-earth. We'd like to take a moment to thank all of our patrons who make this show possible, including Jeremy C., Elizabeth E., Mark G., Mike D., and Dominic M. Their generous donations help us to continue to create The Secrets of Middle-earth and all the shows at StarQuest, and you can join them at givestarquest.com. Be sure to follow The Secrets of Middle-earth in Apple Podcasts, YouTube Music, Spotify, any podcast directory or app. And you can find us on social media at facebook.com/StarQuestMedia, or on X, where we are at SQPN, or on Instagram, where we are at StarQuest Network. And don't forget that you can get your own official Secrets of Middle-earth merch, including our awesome t-shirt at SQPN.com/merch. It's a great way for you to support the show and show your love for Tolkien and his wonderful world of Middle-earth. And now we'd like to hear from you, our listeners. What do you think about Denethor, the Sin of Despair, and the Pope's most recent encyclical? You can let us know on our Facebook page or on Twitter, or by sending an email to middleearth@sqpn.com, or by leaving us a comment on YouTube or on Spotify, or visiting our super cool, awesome channel on the StarQuest Discord community at sqpn.com/Discord. Join us next time for another episode discussing the world of Middle-earth, possibly talking about a trailer that will drop hopefully soon. Until then, thank you, Rob Leonardi, for joining us.
Go now and die in a way that seems best to you. I am so sorry, guys.
Wow,
Thank you,
Rob.
Patrick.
Duly noted. And thank you, Robert Story, for joining us.
I kind of want a tomato now.
And thank you, Father Bryan Shackett.
May the stars continue to shine in the hours of our meeting.
And I'm Patrick Mason. You should, do the good thing to the good people and the right stuff. Yes, love above all. Thank you for listening to The Secrets of Middle-earth on StarQuest.
Here's another show on the StarQuest Network you're sure to enjoy, The Secrets of Star Trek. Find it wherever fine podcasts are found, or at sqpn.com/Star Trek.